All right, here we go. We're making streaming history. Welcome, everyone, to the inaugural edition of Hanging Left. I am Matt Connarton, and with me, of course, my partner in crime in this venture, Todd Ayer, is with us. Hello, Todd.
Hi, how are you today?
Hey, I've never asked you this. Your last name, is it correct to pronounce it Ayer, or are you supposed to actually try to divide it into two syllables and say Ayer? I've never
No,
been sure about that.
yeah, these are the things we deal with right on a daily basis, the important issues.
Yes.
No, air is fine. It's actually an English derivation. A lot of people say Ayer, thinking that I am of Spanish lineage, which
Oh,
I very well may be somewhere back there. Who knows? But
yeah.
to my knowledge, that's not the case. It's English.
I try to be precise with people's names to be respectful because I didn't know. I wasn't sure if maybe it was supposed to be Ayer, but people are just lazy. People are lazy. Maybe
I
people did,
mean,
and then people mispronounce it, and then you just get used to it, right?
right,
Like
right.
like in high school, my nickname became Connarton because
Ah,
the first day of school, when the teachers would take roll call, they would struggle with my last name, and they would say Connarton, and that just kind of became my nickname. Everyone after a while just called me Connarton just for the hell of it. So
interesting.
yes.
Not
But
how I would have pronounced it, but hey.
yeah, I have a very unusual last name. There aren't many. There is one other Matt Connarton in New Hampshire, but he's my uncle, so that
Okay,
almost doesn't even
there you
count
go.
really. But welcome everybody. This is exciting. This is our first one, and we are doing this live, of course. Obviously people, it's Sunday. A lot of people will probably most people will just listen to the podcast after the fact, but it's fun to stream things live, and you never know, we might get some. As a matter of fact, I should probably click the chat room button here so I can. I've just been delivered a pizza, by the way, by Jenny. Jenny is in the room. Thank you,
All
Jenny.
right. Yeah.
Yes, very
Yeah.
nice, very nice.
Shout out to Jenny. How you doing, hon?
Todd says, shout out to Jenny. How you doing, hon?
Hey,
She's good. She's good.
Oh,
So,
excellent.
but yeah, so it's I'm going to open this chat here. And then if anyone does chime in, like I said, you kind of don't know because it's, oh, here it is, because it is a holiday weekend. It is
Right,
Memorial
right.
Day weekend as we're doing this. And, so you don't know who will be around, if anybody, but hopefully somebody does chime in. We are streaming to various platforms at the moment. We're on YouTube and Facebook and all of that. But like I said, I imagine most people will just listen to the podcast afterward. But yeah, so here we are. We should talk about. I think probably the first thing we should do is get to know. I mean, we've gotten to know each other a bit, but give the audience a chance to get to know each of us. And some of our audience will already be familiar with you, and some of them will already be familiar with me. But we can get everybody familiar with everybody here. So, and you and I have very different backgrounds in terms of political involvement, shall we say, and that you have actually been very involved in politics. You've done a lot of really interesting things, and I know you lived in Washington D.C. and you've been really kind of on the inside of things. I, on the other hand, I've been more. I shouldn't even say I've been more. I've been very much on the outside of things. I've never worked for a campaign or run for office or anything like that. I've always been on the outside, just commentating. I've done a lot of political content over the years, and there used to be a large. Oh, I forgot to mute my phone. That's one of the adventures of live streaming. But there used to be a very heavy political component to my radio show, Matt Connarton Unleashed, and then we changed that about a year and a half ago. We took the
Right.
politics out of that, at least that iteration of the program. But
And
I've done a lot of
yeah.
political content, and that's always been my role. So I've always been very much an outsider, just commenting, throwing stones, complaining, yelling into a microphone, all that kind of stuff.
Well,
But you're very involved. So and there's a lot that I probably don't know. You've told me some. I'm sure there's a lot that I don't know, and I'm sure the audience is anxious to hear about your background.
yeah. So, I started this whole, I guess, journey, if you will, way back at the young age of 18. Only 10 years ago. Joking. Anyway, but anyway, yeah. So I started off with the AIDS movement and learned all of the nuts and bolts of grassroots advocacy and even more, I would say, like extreme protest and things of that nature, or more aggressive protesting through
Hmm.
groups like ACT UP and Queer Nation, including one of my favorite little factoids. Well, there's three great moments. My three greatest moments in AIDS activism were this, not necessarily in order. Number one, dropping a large condom on Jesse Helms' home. We rented a helicopter. Someone created a giant condom and we dropped it on his home. That was when he was trying to keep condoms out of the school. So that was our
Oh, okay.
response.
I do
Yep.
remember Jesse Helms. Yes.
Yep. Great guy. Not. Uh,
Yeah.
Number two, it was, a plethora of we used to do these things called die-ins. So
Mhm.
basically, it was representational of all the people that had lost their lives to HIV/AIDS. And, just to really add that punch to people, why not do it during rush hour? So that's what we would do, is we would literally lay in the main thoroughfare of Washington, D.C., where people, like on Mass Ave, places like that, where people are trying to hurry up and get home, and make it so they couldn't hurry up and get home.
Right.
Um, and then the third was one night. It was like it was one of the things that actually spurred Reagan to finally, or no, I guess it was Bush. I'm sorry, Bush, to finally sort of push things further. And that's, we took all the fountains and we dyed them all red. So
Oh, okay.
to represent all of the basically the percentage of blood that was tainted, and not, and the blood on their hands. It was a double metaphor. So I started with that, and then I
Yeah.
kind of segued into any other type of like progressive leaning type cause. Um then I always sort of like rode both sides for a long time. A lot of the majority of my life, I kind of, except for a slightly brief period, I did have my own events management company for a while in Washington, D.C.
Oh, no
Um,
kidding.
yep. And during the day, we did a lot of corporate events and that type of thing. At night, we did a lot of fundraising for nonprofits and big dollar donors. So, my main background is certainly, initially was in the fundraising world and events management. Um, I also had my hands in various, always with like some sort of, in case it isn't obvious by now, yes, I am gay. And I always had sort of my hands and everything in some sort of LGBTQ type. But that was before the alphabet soup. So pretty
Yeah.
much they're the lesbians, gays, and trans. And then, anyway, so I did that. And then, fast forward, um, everything was great, helped out with Obama, did all this other stuff. We could sort of talk about all the nuances because we had reached the second coming of Aquarius, so we thought. And then the bottom falls out and Trump is going for a second term. So, it was between that and January 6th, I would say, were the two things that really spurred me back into
Mm.
action. But what I felt was a bigger value was to pop that bubble, get outside the progressive sphere, and come back to where I was raised, which was Southern New Hampshire, and decide to, spread my message, spread the voice, and do something where I could make a positive impact, rather than just talk to like-minded people. I mean, it's
Right.
great to
Right.
be, yeah, it's great to be agreed with a lot, but you don't really get anywhere that way. You don't change
Yeah.
hearts and minds by talking to your peers.
Yeah.
So then I joined the campaign, the Harris campaign, and a lot of good things about that. I learned a lot. I also learned at that campaign that, even on the Democratic side, there are constraints. So if
Hmm.
you're going to be a party player, you know, you got to follow the rules, and I'm not good at following the rules, Matt. So I decided to break out on my own and sort of do consulting and all of that kind of thing, and that's sort of the direction I'm going. And then also become a personality. Well, I mean, because
Yeah.
I am a personality, so why not share my personality with everyone?
There you go. I like it.
So,
I like it.
so hopefully that filled everybody in,
I
and
think
they're not
so.
bored to tears.
No, no, no. That's great. That was a good overview of what you've done. My background, like I said, I've done a lot of radio and podcasting, and I started really getting into Well, so in the summer of 2011, I was actually invited to be a co-host on a television show here in Manchester called Rock, Paper, Hand Grenades, which was hosted by the late, great Gary S. Hopper, God rest his soul. He passed away a couple of years ago from cancer. But it was an interesting experience because that was effectively a conservative talk show. And I was kind of the sidekick and who was kind of the fly in the ointment who, came in and asked a lot of questions and about, in some ways I look back on it and think I should have been more aggressive than I was.
Yeah.
I could critique a lot of my performance on that show. I think, my screen just froze. Are you still with me, Todd?
I'm good. Yeah. Yeah. I'm
Okay.
good.
As long as we have the audio, we're okay.
So you basically were a black fly in their Chardonnay, to quote Alanis Morissette there.
That's fine. Yeah. But yeah, so I did that for about 5 years. And then I was already doing Matt Connarton Unleashed, which was my podcast. And then I had the opportunity to bring Unleashed to WMNH 95.3 here in Manchester. But to do that, I had to leave Rock, Paper, Hand Grenades. So I brought Unleashed. There's been various iterations of Unleashed over the years, of podcasts. There was a television version, the radio version. And about a year and a half ago, we took the politics out of Unleashed. Not entirely my decision, but so the radio show now is more just based on interviewing musicians. I interview a lot of musicians, which I love, and interviewing creative people in general. And Jenny helps with that tremendously. She's my co-host, and she also does the booking of the guests. But yeah, and I've done, there's other political things I've done in terms of content creation and whatnot. I won't get into all of it, but like I said, I mean, that kind of sums up my background as far as being a political commentator. I've always been fascinated by politics from an unhealthily young age. For whatever reason, I just got hooked. Well, for whatever reason I say, but I think the reason I got hooked on politics was when I was growing up. I remember being very young, and my father, who at this point in his life has completely changed politically, but my dad, who was a Democrat when I was growing up, and his best friend Dan was a Republican, and they would have these fascinating conversations, and I would just sit and listen to them. But I think that's what got me hooked on politics. And so here we are. Here I am today.
Yeah, no, and I can
Talking with you.
definitely piggyback on that a little bit. Like, as a matter of fact, my father helped on Mayor Jim Donchez. Shout out to Jim. He's great. On his first campaign way back in the day. And
Oh,
he is now still the mayor. So I think he did take a break somewhere in between there, but he's back and still the mayor. So yeah, so politics were always sort of in my lifeblood and kind of something always promoted in
yeah.
my family.
Yeah, no doubt. So we should talk about what the show is, and I also said what it is not, because excuse me, I had to cough there. I tried to mute the mic and talk. My allergies have been terrible. I don't know if you suffer from
Oh
allergies,
God.
Todd, but one of my guests
Touche.
one of my guests on Matt Connarton Unleashed told me that he found out that he saw this online, that apparently the Northeast is the highest concentration of pollen in the entire world. In the Northeast, I had no idea.
Interesting.
But I
did not know that either.
But I do believe it. My screen just went completely black. Are you still with me, Todd?
I am.
Okay.
They're trying to shut us off the air already.
I think so. This computer might need an update. But as long as we can still hear each other, we know the audio is recording, so we're okay.
Cool.
So I to talk a little bit about what the show is. Obviously, we're coming at things from a specific ideological perspective. I like to call myself an independent, but I've left my registration alone. I've left it as Democrat for quite some time. And for people who don't know, here in New Hampshire, you have to if you want to vote in a primary, you have to be registered as a Republican or a Democrat, and then you can change it back right after to independent if you want to. But I never bother. I just, and I have voted for Republicans in the past, but usually only in local elections where it's somebody I knew. And I have a couple of times voted for Republican Governor Chris Sununu, which I actually now regret. So, but for the most part, I end up voting Democrat anyway. And now that the party has been, now that the Republican Party is completely taken over by MAGA, it's entirely possible that I'll never vote for another Republican as long as I live. So, but I don't know how you feel about all that. Have you ever voted for a Republican, or have you
I
always
have
voted for?
not, but I have always been raised in a family, where I was always told it was important to listen to both sides.
Yeah,
My family's a pariah because, interestingly enough, my father was like a successful defense and energy contractor, but always a registered Democrat. And my mother was an educator, and up until relatively later in life, a registered Republican. So go figure. Who knows what that was all about?
yeah, yeah. That's interesting, though.
It
Yeah.
is, but at the end of the day, I think that they all probably would have been more independents. I mean, had we not been in New Hampshire, I
Hmm.
think maybe that would have been the route. They always believed in supporting the candidate and supporting the person and not the party.
Yeah.
Um, and that used to be my mantra. People like Governor Weld and things of that nature, from Massachusetts, had I lived there, I would have considered, certainly, and probably would have voted for him. So
Yeah.
there was a time where I would have considered the Republican Party. But I'll tell you, I think it's fair to say, Matt, you don't have to say that you'll no longer vote Republican, because in my opinion, there is no Republican Party anymore.
Yeah. It's all been taken over by MAGA. I mean, I don't know. I'm sure there's a couple of never Trump Republicans that are serving in office somewhere, but really, the never Trumpers are all on the outside. They've all been
Yep.
cast out. Um,
Loud and proud, unfortunately.
my favorite never Trumpers are the Bulwark. Shout out to the Bulwark. I'm a big fan of theirs, but
Great. That is a great show.
absolutely, absolutely. Yeah. So now, and this is not to say, and this might kind of lead into talking about what the show is not, because, well, let me say this. I don't think either of us are interested in simply just carrying the water for whoever or I don't think either of us, not to speak for you, tell me if I'm wrong, but I don't think either of us are fans of the establishment of the Democratic Party. I feel that they cost us, I mean, I largely blame the Democratic establishment for the fact that we have another term of Trump. I mean,
Uh,
it's hard not to be angry at them, right? I mean, especially after they
um,
covered for Biden the way they did and everything.
sure. A few things there, though. I think that, first off, and I may be being naive and or idealistic, or maybe even just hopeful.
Yeah.
Probably more hopeful, because no one would ever accuse me of being idealistic. Um, I'm much more of a cynic. But anyway, I felt like there were actually sort of metaphoric handcuffs on for instance, with Harris.
Hmm.
Um, I feel like, at least from the people really close to her that I had the opportunity from working on the campaign to get to know, what they said she wanted to say and then what the sort of talking heads told her to say were sort of two different things. So,
Sure.
yes, I would blame the brick and mortar, lockstep Democratic Party, but I would not blame necessarily all of the political, figureheads within the Democratic Party. I think some of them are actually really great people. I think some of them, they're realists, but they have, I guess I do have an idealistic spirit, but they
Hmm.
also are realists and they're not afraid to shake things up. But every time, for whatever reason, the Democratic Party decided to make itself, vanilla.
Hmm.
And, why now the Republican Party is seen as radical, and the party of protest and liberation is now about as boring
Sure.
as a pair of pleated dockers, is beyond me. I don't know. So yeah, just honestly, for my soul, I could never be officially a member of, like, the Democratic, lockstep Democratic Party as it stands now, because I have a punk rock spirit. I'm never going to give that up. And,
Yeah.
y- you know, to me, they're not authentic right now.
I think, I think part of the problem in the Democratic Party is, uh, an unwillingness to risk of hurting the feelings of old people. And what I mean by that is, I understand no one wanted to hurt Joe Biden's feelings, But what we're now faced with confronting is the way that something else just happened on my computer. Can you still hear me, Todd?
I can. I can.
Excellent. Good, good. Okay. Um, so that means we're still recording. Good. Okay. So, so I gotta restart this computer later. Um, but so the way that I mean, obviously Biden, I feel, should not have run for a second term. It never should have been on the table. And I feel like they really tried to sneak one past
It
us.
Yeah, I mean, it actually shows honestly, there's such a thing, in my life, I've always been in positions of, especially like when I was living in DC, I've been in positions of like sort of, for lack of a better word, power, influence, notoriety. And I can tell you, the people that told me no, or the people that told me I was wrong, I learned a heck of a lot more from those people than the people that were just yes men. And I think
Yeah.
the problem is that for some reason, people are afraid to tell people in leadership that, either your time has passed or that's not a good idea or whatever it is. And what actually is ironic is you're doing two things. Number one, you're helping their career by not letting them fall on their swords, so to speak.
Hmm.
And you're also, I think, being a better friend. So if you're really invested in someone, I mean, anybody can tell anybody, yes, sure, that's a great idea. But it's the people that are willing to challenge you and show you a little bit of tough love. And I think that's what they should have done with Biden. I mean, let's face it, especially where, they had an out. They could have said, Joe, you said you're a one-term president. That's what we expected. And that's what we planned for. And so
Yeah.
we'd like you to honor that. But, you know, to me, it just reminds me of a very sad, and luckily it didn't get to this point. But all I can remember is that when the last Rockin' New Year's Eve, which sounds like a weird metaphor, but that Rockin' New Year's Eve that they basically wheeled Dick Clark out of there, he basically was on life support.
Hmm.
And the guy, he couldn't even form a cohesive sentence. And rather than let the guy bow out gracefully, they like tapped him for that last bit of life juice.
Yeah.
And I don't think you're ever doing anyone a favor, and history typically tells us that. If you look back, I think leaving whatever it is you do gracefully, and will you still have your integrity and you still have a sense of class and self-respect, and no one wants to sit and fumble and fall apart in front of the public.
Right.
And I think that they would have been doing him a favor to, and the world really, to let him do that. um
Yeah. And also, and yeah, and you're right. I mean, it would have been the best thing for him because what is his legacy now? His legacy could have been he came in, he cleaned up a lot of the chaos that was happening and got us through the pandemic, got us through COVID, and kept the economy humming along. I mean, I understand people are upset about inflation; it affects all
those
of us, but
eggs, those damn eggs.
exactly. But overall, the economy actually was very, very strong. Um, and that all could have been Biden's legacy.
It
And
really could
what,
have.
but what is his legacy now? He handed the keys to the White House back over to Trump. That's his
Yeah.
legacy.
Yeah. I mean, which is what is so ironic is that he ran on defeating Trump. And in fact, he achieved that goal. I mean, not only did he defeat Trump from his first term and turn back so many things that Trump had just completely fumbled and bumbled and dismantled and just wrecked, but he made it better. So he
Hmm.
could have walked away with such an amazing legacy. And I think even your Zoomers and your younger millennials would have given him a gold star if he had done that.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. Um, and we're seeing this fealty too to the old guard play out in other ways, whether it's with Chuck Schumer, doesn't want to, we can't let the next generation in for some reason, and it's a
When,
problem.
when did Democrats be so pro life support? I mean, like, it's like we put people on life support before they should be put on it. Like, just let them like retire, for God's sakes.
Yeah, absolutely, 100%. Yeah, so we're very stuck as far as all of that goes, and I don't know. and obviously you see it on the Republican side too. I mean, Trump is almost 80, but it doesn't seem to matter. I mean, MAGA just kind of operates under its own set of rules.
Well, I mean, they're a cult. I mean, MAGA's a
Yeah,
cult at this point. So
100%.
cults don't typically acknowledge anything. I mean, Trump could claim that every day, he doesn't leave the White House in a limousine, but he levitates, and they would all agree.
Yeah.
And those that didn't agree would lose their position in power. It's, so we're not dealing with a logical group of people, at least not at his base.
No, I mean, we're talking about people who, if their leader tells them that a recession would actually be a long-term positive for the American economy, and they just believe it. They go, "Oh, okay." Ooh.
Right. And these same people are looking at their bank accounts and their 401ks, if they have them or whatever, diminish right in front of their eyes. But it's like, both plausible. I mean, no, it's not even plausible deniability. I call it willful ignorance. I mean, just unbelievable. It's one or the other. They're either just stupid, crazy, or they're willfully ignorant. And I think all three of those categories actually fit somewhere within the sort of like, Rubik's, which is the MAGA crowd. They fit in one of those categories.
Yeah, they're happy about it. They think that it's part of some larger plan that this brilliant businessman has for them, and they just
I always judge the brilliance of a guy's aptitude in business by how many times he's gone bankrupt. I mean, that's really, to me, just great. I mean, that's what you want. A guy that's just bankrupted himself. Where are we on? Like half a dozen times now?
The more casinos you bankrupt, clearly, the greater your acumen for business.
Absolutely. I mean, it shows it. I mean, you're only running a business based on money, but you bankrupt it. I mean,
right.
Hey, who wouldn't bankrupt a casino? I mean,
Right. The house always wins, even if you own it.
Yeah, right. Except if you're Trump. I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, but you don't need to win because you tell people you won anyway, and they believe you.
That's right. Yes.
That
casino was stolen.
Of course. Probably was the Democrats. I'm sure they were hacking into the system.
So I have a thought as far as going forward with, as far as the Democratic Party going forward. I see a lot of hand wringing continuing, obviously right after the election, but continuing about messaging, how best to deal with our current situation and so forth. And I think that this is my theory. I'll say something that I don't think enough people say. I think the real problem for the Democrats is an inability to message. I've been saying this for as long as I can remember. Democrats are really bad at messaging. Republicans are very good at it. Democrats are very bad at it. They're bad at they're poor communicators generally, because if you look at what happens in those rare instances where someone comes along, where a Democrat comes along who actually can communicate well and present ideas well and consistently, what happens? They end up serving 2 terms as president, whether it's Bill Clinton or Barack Obama. Two examples of Democrats who, wow, imagine this, could actually communicate clearly and coherently and convince people of their message. But I think generally speaking, I think Democrats just generally are very bad at messaging.
I think that's an interesting perspective. I don't know if it's that they're bad at their messaging or they're lazy at their messaging. The other thing I think, to kind of segue into a sort of a side topic with that, is that I guess I feel like it's kind of along those lines, but I feel like they leave the messaging to the wrong people. So, this last election that we were working on, the messaging, and I mean daily, was controlled and altered by analytical data crunchers. So they would literally run reports on data, and then based on what the various reports and stats were saying, they would expect everybody to stop and pivot with the communication and the messaging of the campaign. Yeah. And I'll tell you, that's not a great way to run a campaign. if you're trying to fight the whole, like, we care about, everybody, then to look like an analytical nerd is not a good way to do it. And people don't want to sit and just let you data dump, because either it bores them, or those of us that are, intelligent to know that data and stats and all that stuff, people think it's facts. It's actually one of the easiest things to manipulate. I mean, you can make reports and statistics and things like that say what you want them to say just by moving numbers around.
Oh, yeah, 100%. Absolutely.
So, and I think the other problem is that, I loved Barack, and I even like Michelle, but I'll tell you that when we go low, they go high. When you're fighting against, it would be like in Star Wars if, the what was it, the rebels, the rebels. I don't know why I forgot that. Anyway, the rebels decided to, like, sit down and try to have a compromise with Vader and the Emperor. I mean, it wouldn't have happened if and honestly, what would have happened is they would have walked in the room and they would have sliced all their heads off with lightsabers. And that was the MAGA mentality. And yet we still have these idealistic fools thinking that you could reason with these people, because they're like, hearkening back to the days where they could go, and argue whatever it was they were arguing in the Senate or the House, and then go break bread with each other after. And those days are over. These guys don't want to break bread with us. As a matter of fact, they want to put cyanide in the bread, and they hope we eat it anyway and die. Like, these are not people that want to negotiate. So,
but I think that we make it easy for them. I mean, part of it is because it's very easy for them to define us, because we don't. Again, I go back to messaging. Let me give you an example, and this is an example of how they get to define us, or how they get to define conditions that affect the country, like the economy, for example. So we now live in a time like during the Joe Biden administration. If you were a Democrat, generally, I mean, I'm speaking broadly, not everyone, but generally, if you were a Democrat, you would probably think that the economy was pretty good, because the fundamentals of the economy were very good. And if you were a Republican, you thought the economy was in a gutter, because Republicans are telling you all day long that, well, inflation is high, therefore the economy is terrible, everything costs too much. And I wish, and part of the problem with this is the guy at the top, Joe Biden, was already at a point where he could no longer articulate complex ideas. At one time he could have. At one time he was very good at messaging, but that time had long passed. And so this is an example where what we needed was Democrats to be able to explain to the American people that, yes, inflation is high, but by the way, we have the lowest inflation of anybody in the modern industrialized world coming out of the pandemic. So we're actually doing better on inflation than the rest of the world. But this is a post-pandemic hangover. But the rest of the economy is actually very strong. So we just need to continue to try to figure out ways to bring down inflation. I think what I just said is pretty. I think I explained that pretty clearly, right?
You did. But let me tell you something.
But find me a Democratic lawmaker who could actually say what I just said. It's like they can't do it for some reason.
I'll tell you. Here's my cynicism coming through. At this point, honestly, that's part of it. But honestly, I think we should have done more of the, agreeing with the fact, not agreeing with the fact the economy was bad, but agreeing with the fact that people felt the economy was bad.
Yes, I agree.
We should have validated their feelings. We should have stopped arguing with them. At the end of the day, we're not, I know we always say winning hearts and minds, and Democrats want to be everybody's friends. Forget it. We're trying to win an election, and we're trying to keep a crazy person out of the White House. So all steps should have been pulled to do so, including acknowledge things we didn't necessarily agree with. And it's all, you just learn a very simple phrase. You just say things like, I'm sorry you feel that way, or I see how you can feel that way. It's nuances. I'm not saying in any of those phrases that I agree with what that person's saying. I'm
Right.
just simply saying, you feel that way. I acknowledge it. Let's move forward. How can I help you not feel that way?
Yeah. Yeah, I think Democrats are bad at that generally. I just it's again it just all comes down to messaging and communication for me.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I
I don't
get
think
it.
I don't think any of this is hard. I don't think it should be hard, and yet we can sit here and explain this stuff, but
I
but
mean,
nobody running the
hey,
party can do it. It's
yeah.
frustrating.
I mean, but also, it's tough when your position is you want to be everybody's good guy.
Yes.
It's like, to some extent, well, the whole thing was inauthentic. It's like they walk in the door and the Democrats decide they want to be the parent of the country,
Mhm.
but then they don't have enough, you know, excuse my language, balls to discipline the child. So, okay, so you're saying you want to be the parent, but now you're agreeing, you don't want to upset your child, so you don't ground them. And that's kind
Yeah.
of what they did. So it's like, I think that, to me, that when we go low, we go high crap. I think that was the nail in the coffin personally. But, I also tend to be a little bit more aggressive and muscular anyway with those types of things. So,
Yeah.
it's all how you look at it, right? But
Yeah.
yeah, I think communications absolutely, but I think we even have to delve in further. But I'll also say this: at the end of the day, we need to see this as an opportunity because we lost everything, right? So this is a restart.
Mhm.
We can do an overhaul. We can change everything, and I don't know. I've heard some interesting facts out there in you know in the world that basically says that right now it's kind of the opposite of what people think. The grassroots organizations, the advocacy groups, and the nonprofits are driving the messaging, and basically we are telling the politicians what we want instead of them telling us what they want, and then us going out there and perpetuating what it is they're looking for, their agenda. Did I lose you, Matt? Okay, looks like we lost Matt. Interesting. So I'll tell you what, I'm going to go on.
This is way behind.
Segue into.
Can hear. We just had everything. Hey, Todd.
Hopefully. Hey, how are you? Hey,
Good.
hey, I like it. I like it. It keeps us on our toes, right?
Yeah, technology kind of screwed us there for a minute, so I had to restart everything, but we're back.
And I also don't know when I stopped broadcasting or not broadcasting. So maybe they heard me say I was going to send you a message and see what's going on. Maybe they didn't. Who knows?
Oh, no, I didn't hear that, so I don't think they
Okay. Okay.
either. They was. I'm not sure
So
what it
we were
was.
talking about the Democratic Party.
Yeah.
And we were talking about, oh, I know what it was. So I think that this is, I was trying to change it a little bit. And I was saying basically that at the end of the day, I think we can go back and forth and dissect to the point of like, there's no more cadaver left to dissect.
Yeah.
Which is kind of what we do, I think, a little too much sometimes, frankly. I think at this time it's like turn anger into action and let's just get out there and make the change. And what I was trying to say is that this, you can look at it as, and for me to say this is pretty scary, but you can look at this as either the glass is half full or half empty. And for some crazy reason, I'm going on a whim here and looking at it as the glass is half full. And what I mean by that is that, when you start at the bottom, it is an opportunity to just completely change and transcend. And
Yeah.
we're almost better off saying, yeah, we really blew it. We failed. We lost, 25 games out of the 26. You know what I mean? And and we're better off doing that. And then just moving forward and talking about A, what wins, and B, what's our messaging? And I think that at the end of the day, the public, and I'm going to get a little bit you know, I'll try to say this nicely. The public is kind of malleable.
Mhm.
So,
Oh, yeah.
and we learned that through the Trump situation. So, just like Trump can convince people that the round earth is flat, I think we can convince people that not only is the world round, but it's better that it's round for them and it's going to make their life better in a round world. And we just have to like, number one, acknowledge their fears. You know,
Mhm.
you don't sit and like yell at a child that there's no like monster under their bed. You
Right.
show them there's no monster under their bed. So we have to start showing people there's, we can help with that. Well, except unfortunately there is a monster under our bed right now, but we have to tell them we have a solution for this monster instead
Yes.
of like, you're right, there's a monster. It's a bad, bad monster. And we're not as bad as that monster. We actually are the tooth fairy and we're going to give you money. Like,
Right.
you know what I mean? It's like, I
Yeah.
know that was a random little tangent that I went on, but you know what I'm saying? Like, to me, it's like, okay, people know who Trump is. People know what he's about. They're learning every day more and more. If we don't take this opportunity to change and win, we're idiots. We basically don't deserve to win, honestly.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like you and I that are the small group that's sane, we should start packing our bags and pooling our resources and looking at some real estate to buy together and create our own little version of like, ironic utopia. Because I, I can't do this forever. Like at some
Right.
point, it's like that whole like, you lead that horse to water. God damn it, take a drink.
Well, there is gonna be, there will be an opportunity in 26, obviously, for, history tells us there will be a pretty big, probably a very large blue wave. Um, but we got to get there. And in the meantime, and the way that, you and I met, of course, is because of our, we both have a passion for healthcare activism. Obviously as Jenny's partner, I've seen what she goes through with her insurer, and we should have. I personally, I think that healthcare is a human
Absolutely.
right. Just from a moral and ethical perspective, there's
I
no,
mean, yeah. What
and
do you?
we live
Right.
the most
What's the
prosperous.
alternative? Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, all of our
I mean,
peers give healthcare to their people. I mean, it's a no
yeah,
brainer to my. And P.S. A sick population is not very productive. So even if you're looking at from an economic standpoint, it's not smart.
right, exactly. And economically, it would be, if we had single payer. And by the way, so I'm not in favor of, because people talk about, they throw these terms around sometimes without knowing what they mean, like socialized medicine or a government takeover of healthcare. I just want single payer. Get rid of the
Yeah.
insurance companies, have single payer, and the law should be, if your doctor says, here's what you need, or even if it's an experimental treatment, here's what I might think you need. That's it. They prescribe it, you get it. It's paid for, period, full stop. And it would be great. And people
Right.
complain about, well, I don't want my tax dollars to pay for that. Well, imagine if you took the insurance companies out of it, and then your employer no longer has to pay for your insurance,
Yeah. Yeah.
and you have that money. That
Right.
money
Right.
now is part of your salary. That would be
Absolutely.
incredible.
Right. Put some golden handcuffs on pharma
Hmm.
and the insurance people. Which PS guys, they're in it for money. That's why they're
Yep.
there.
Yeah.
Especially insurance. If insurance isn't in it for money, I don't know what the heck they're doing. But
Right.
anyway, yeah, let's just start making demands. It's like we have to, you don't get what you don't ask for. So let's start
Hmm.
asking for things. Heck, let's demand it. And we need to start holding our leaders accountable. And I think that's
Yes.
what's so great moving forward. We need to say to people like, you know what, like, I'm not going to say any names, but let's just put it this way. I belong to a group called the Human Rights Campaign, HRC. We're the
Yes.
biggest LGBTQ lobby in the nation, if not the country. We have conservatively 4 million people that are members and quite a few very active volunteer people. And we're a pretty powerful lobby. And what I love about the new leadership of HRC is that, like, guess what? Just because you can check off one of the LGBTQs in front of your name, we're not going to guarantee support for you politically. You've got to
Right.
show us what you're going to do for the community, how you're going to give back.
Yes.
Because we don't need the token gay in office or the token lesbian or even the token trans. Because guess what? They're there. We've done it. So now we need, I don't care what you are, we need a human that is going to go for human common sense change. And
Yes.
that's not cutting edge. That's not, you know, revolutionary or wild. It's just, treating people how they want to be treated.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I agree with you.
Did we zoom in somehow? I don't know what
I did that. I was just
Okay,
playing
we're
with the
good. We're
format a
good.
little bit. That looks good. Hey, we look good on camera.
We do. We do. I'm glad that other way was, I feel like giving me a chin, which I don't.
Yeah, so that's obviously, unfortunately, with who's in charge now, these things keep getting chipped away at.
Right. Right.
Um, but
Yeah.
yeah,
You,
and I don't know if we'll ever see single payer in our lifetimes, but maybe.
I don't know, because the good news is I'm actually working, with a young man. His name's Jason. I'm getting him involved. Jason Keno, wonderful kid. And he's kind of looking at it from what I just said. It's like his generation, the Zoomer generation or the Alpha or whatever they are. I don't know. I can't keep up. But anyway, they're not arguing anymore of whether the system is broken. It's broken.
Yeah.
So they are now picking up their tools and picking up whatever it is they have and trying to fix it, rather than these back and forth echo chamber. We're broken, but we're not that broken.
Yeah.
Or, we're broken, but look at Haiti. I mean, this is the kind of crap we pull. It's like, if we have to compare ourselves to, like, governments that are falling apart at the seams, if this is like our, I don't know about you, but like, I didn't tout loving to be an American so I could be compared to, like, the Congo and Haiti and things like this.
You know what I think the problem is, and this is part of why it's hard to convince people, is we're conditioned to believe in the system that we have, because and part of it I don't think is even intentional. I think it's just circumstance, because when you're young and you're healthy, and if you're working a full-time job for a company with a good health insurance plan. So, for example, I just froze again. Can you still hear me?
Yep, I can still hear you.
All right, we're good. I don't know why this keeps freezing, but if we're if you're young and healthy and you work for a company that gives you a good health insurance plan, and I remember being in that position and going to the doctor, once in a while if I thought something was wrong, and just having to pay a very low copay, maybe a $10 copay, and then never see a bill. And everything was covered. It was just really good insurance. And then that was it. So we're conditioned to take it for granted. So you learn when you're young, you just learn to take it for granted. So then when you get older, it's a surprise when more things start to go wrong because you're older. And now it's like, now the insurance company is looking for excuses to actually deny you
sure
care that you need. And now it's a whole new ball game.
But I think we also have to change our mindset a little bit as Americans. There's two misnomers out there as Americans. Like, I am all for, obviously I'm very much believe in independence and believe in the rights of the individual, but the rights of the individual cannot be at the expense of everyone else. And furthermore, this whole belief, people that talk about how, they made them all, they're wealthy and they've made all their wealth all by themselves, is such bogus. No one, certainly no billionaire, is a billionaire standing alone on their own. They didn't just make one, fantastic, unbelievable, out of this world stock trade that made them a billionaire overnight with no infrastructure and no assistance and no, and it's unrealistic. So this whole belief that we're islands, we're not. So we need to get in touch with that. And I think also, so there's some soul searching we need to do. And I also think that, as much as, back in the day, there was a time where, like, it was almost like, I like to sort of look at life as like Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And I think once you reach, a comfortable living, you don't just, sit there and now you're in a nursing home, which is what people want to do. It's like, okay, I've succeeded. No, that's not that. What that allows you to do is now you have the luxury to have time and to make change and make a positive impact, and really to show appreciation for the world that made you who you are. Now it's your turn,
Yeah.
And I think we need to start instilling that value in, you know, right from the get-go, um, in people. And I think if we stop looking at ourselves as like these islands that can, exist on our own, and realize that humans are very much a social animal, I, I think that's part of the battle right there.
Yeah, I agree. And there's no shortage of data and studies that show that, unfortunately, um, and I don't know if this is globally necessarily, or only in the United States. It's probably just human nature in general. People tend to, the more wealth they amass, the less empathy they have, and I suspect that's probably just a part of human nature. But I agree with you that we do need to teach people to, value others more, and to understand, nobody gets there on their own, and if you're
Yeah.
if you're rich and successful and you're selling a product, well, you still need people to buy that product.
I guess for me, it's a little different because, from my perspective, because, being a gay man and seeing the AIDS crisis and all of that, like, I'll
Mm,
tell you, the vast majority of those people were wealthy, like that became infected. Quite a few were
interesting.
wealthy. That's what it hurt, was our upper middle class, our upper class, because they were living, the more decadent lifestyle. They were, doing what it is they wanted to do, so they could afford to take risks and all of that jazz. But anyway, the point is, I think that, maybe people have to face adversity, but I think that regardless of your socioeconomic status, if you've experienced adversity and you're honest about that adversity, I think you can have sympathy and empathy for other people. You know,
Yes.
I don't necessarily know what it's like to be, a black kid growing up in a inner city ghetto, but I do know what it's like to be, marginalized, at least as far as influence and power wise, or told that, like, yeah, I'm expected to contribute at the same level as everyone else, but I'm not going to get the same level of privilege for that. And so, I think that maybe draw like broader strokes, if that's what we need to do. If we need to internalize why we care about people, then do that. You know,
Hmm.
whatever people need to do to make it happen.
Yeah. It's yeah, it's I agree with all of that. Um we're coming up on an hour. What do you think, Todd? Should we this is kind of the introductory episode. Should we start to wind this one down?
I mean, it's up to you. I don't know. What is the normal attention span? I mean, I can keep going, but I like to hear myself talk. Probably too much, though.
Yeah, that's all right. I'd like to. Well, what I think. I think it's been really good so far. I think this was a good. I think this was a good start, a good kind of introduction. We should mention, and I'm also anxious to get this edited and get this uploaded.
Okay,
So
cool. Did you
share it
happen
with.
to say what we weren't? I don't remember if we covered that.
I think, I don't think that we ever really covered it fully, but we're not. Yeah, we should talk a little bit more about that. We're not a couple of people who are gonna, come on here and just speak a bunch of liberal talking points and just or toe the party line, certainly, or whatever. We're both people who we have a lot to say, and we're probably going to say some things that maybe not everyone who would otherwise agree with us might agree with us on, or I have no problem, and I know you don't either, criticizing the Democrats when I think they've got something wrong. Um, as I alluded to earlier, pretty angry with the establishment, and those, especially those around Biden, who tried to get one past
Right,
us with Biden. Until that debate happened and they could no longer get one past us. The
right.
jig was up at that point, clearly. Um,
I
but
mean, I think it's all about, to me, authenticity. It's like, to
yeah,
some extent, like, here's the deal. If you're going to hold yourself up as, like, the savior of the world, then you better save the world. Like,
yes,
in some ways, as much as I can't stand the person, um, you know, at least Trump is authentic. I mean, I authentically hate him.
sure.
And he's authentically evil, but he's authentic in his malice, so so that's much more believable. I think in some ways one of the worst things is people that don't have a stand.
Hmm.
So,
Yeah.
and to your point, people that watch our show are not going to have to worry about that, because honestly, that's why I choose to do this as opposed to like go work for the party or something.
Yeah.
And I've even been told by people on the inside of the party the same thing. It's like, Todd, you're great. You got great ideas. You got a lot of charisma, whatever, but you're a little bit like, you're willing to push the envelope. Exactly. And
Yes.
so that's why I'm here.
Yep, yep, absolutely. Excellent, excellent. So I think what we'll do is we'll wrap this one up.
Yep.
Episode 1 in the books of Hanging Left, and soon we'll have. I know we're gonna have a fancy new logo, and we're gonna have. And we're gonna have guests too. We should mention that too. It's not just gonna be the two of us yapping every week. We're gonna have guests join us and so forth. And as I'm always saying too, the show can change and evolve over time. It's not as though whatever we decide it is today, it doesn't have to be exactly what it is tomorrow. These things have a way of changing and evolving, and that's exciting too. That's one of the really fun things about doing something like this. But
Absolutely. I mean, I figure we'll change as much as Trump changes his tariff rates.
yes, yes. All right, very good, very good. My screen has gone completely black again.
All right. Well,
So I'm going to the way that I'm going to actually end this episode is by closing the computer because I have no other way to do it.
okay. Well,
And I think next week I'm going to use Chrome instead of Microsoft Edge for a browser because I think that might be the issue. But yeah, but thank you to everyone who has been watching live, who hung in with us, and I'll do some editing on the recorded version, of course, and we'll put that up. And I hope everyone follows us on social media
yes.
and all that
Thank
kind
you
of
so
stuff.
much.
And you can visit my website, mattconnerton.com. And Todd, do you want to tell people how they can find you on social media? Or?
Yeah, I mean, I'm Todd Ayer on Facebook. There's a link right there to Instagram. There's plenty of ways to find me, and I'll get a little bit more concise list of links and things of that nature.
Sure.
I probably should create a link tree, and we'll do all of that moving forward. But I just want to echo what Matt said. Thank you so much for tuning in. And for those of you that were not able to tune in live, that's okay. There's plenty of time to listen to us in off hours, and take care. And everybody enjoy their Memorial Day.
Yes. Happy Memorial Day, everybody. All right. That's it for
All
the
right.
inaugural edition of Hanging Left. Talk to y'all soon.
Signing off. Bye
Bye,
bye.
Todd.